So in this video, I'm actually going to show you guys how I managed to get ChatGPT to actually do my technical analysis. Here you can see actively drawing these swing lows and swing highs. And later I'll show you exactly how I even managed to predict the charts based on technical analysis on a recent video that I even made money from. Can ChatGPT actually provide you with any analysis when it comes to technical analysis? This is the question I had, and genuinely the results have surprised me. I'm someone who's actually tested these models for over a year now when it comes to technical analysis. I even created my own benchmark. And so far, I've seen an increasing trend in the model's ability to be able to get better and better. An O4 Mini is by far the #1 model when it comes to technical analysis. Let me show you guys why this is changing everything. So everyone knows what technical analysis is. Usually online, it can be the very basic things such as grabbing your horizontal ray and drawing support and resistance. Or in some advanced cases, you might be able to spot, certain patterns of a breakout or a fake out, and then you might be able to, of course, predict where price goes because of that. Now, what if you could use an AI to simply take a screenshot of your current web page and then ask the AI where it thinks the price would go? I did that 24 hours ago and it actually accurately predicted the price of a certain asset. Now, the model I use here is one that most people don't actually know exists. The model I use is O4 Mini High. O4 Mini High is great at coding and visual reasoning. Every other model is subpar or just inefficient when it comes to truly looking at image and analyzing the real details. And trust me guys, I've tested every single one of them. So with O4 Mini selected, here's what I did. I actually took a screenshot of the hourly chart of Render ERC. This is a token that I commonly trade, and I wanted to see if it could possibly gauge where price was going to go within the next few hours. And if it could accurately guess the current pattern that was forming. You see, I actually studied technical analysis quite a lot, and I was wondering if the AI could see exactly what I could. I'm not saying like I'm some genius and the AI is never going to be able to see what I can, but if the AI can spot exactly what I can, then maybe times when I can't spot something, the AI can spot something that I probably might miss. So all I did was I took a screenshot of this, and for reference, this is what the price of render was when I actually took the screenshot. So we can see right here that basically what we do have forming is essentially a bull flag. So we got this upward trend, and then if I actually draw the flag right here, you can see that there is a small flag forming as price moves up. Now remember, I just submitted the raw chart, so it wouldn't have actually seen these yellow lines. And so all I did was I just literally input this image. And so what I actually did was I actually used this image when structuring my prompt. This was actually released by the official OpenAI team. This is how they want you to structure a prompt, and this is specific to reasoning models. So there are two different types of models. Models like normal ones like GPT-4 that don't think, and models like O3, O4, and O1 that actually think before responding. This is the only thing that you need to make sure you're doing before actually inputting anything into those reasoning models. And most people miss this important step, which is why they get subpar results from the models. So then doing that, I came over to my community, came on over to the prompts area, then I came on over to chart analysis v2, reasoning. Then I simply input this in, and you can see right here that it actually gave me some really interesting information. And I want you guys to pay attention here because in this specific example, we can really tell that this data is way out of distribution considering it just happened in the last 8 hours. So let me actually show you just how accurate this was. So it talks about the most recent swing low being at $4.60. And then the most recent swing high was at $5.05 to $5.10. And if we actually take a look at what it was saying, if we actually just map out the 460 levels, we can see that if we place our bar at the 460 level right here, this is actively right when it swung low and moved further. And if we take a look at the recent swing highs at 505, we can see it actively managed to get the swing lows and the swing highs pretty correctly. But we can actually go a step further and see more of what it said. And it shows us the major support and major resistance, an area where price repeatedly found buyers at 460, which of course it did. And the major resistance was at $5 to $5.10, which we can clearly see is accurate. Now, let me actually just mark these with a price label. So I'm going to put the price label there, and we can see the price label there. So we can literally see that 460 and 4505 are areas that were accurately identified by the model. But of course, that's not all the model did. It actually told us that it was observing certain trends. It says there is a series of higher highs and higher lows, which is a classic sign of an uptrend. It also said it's tight sideways drift as a fast climb, which looks like a small bull flag / consolidation under $5.10. And it also says that price sits well above the 200 MA, which is a faint line. Now, honestly, this is actually a hallucination. In a current screenshot, there isn't actually any faint line right there. So I don't know what the model is seeing, so it does kind of lose points for that. But nonetheless, it actually does tell us a trade, and if we actually took that trade, it would be profitable. So take a look at this. It says price is parked almost at exactly the 505. If this breaks and closes above, we could move higher. It actually tells us our trade plan. It says stay out if there's no breakout or a strong rejection and a wick forms at 505. it does say, wait for a clear 1 hour candle close above top 510 and then have a long. And then put your stop loss at $5.80. And then put your stop loss of $4.80. Put your take profit at $5.50 with a risk to reward ratio of 1 to 2. And it explains its entire trade history right here. So let's actually take those values and see what would have happened. So it says to put our stop loss at the 480 area, which is right here. Then it says to put our entry at around up here, which is actually rather interesting. And it actually says to put our take profit actually at the 550 area. So our entry would have actually been at the 510 area. So this is the trade that O3 says. So clearly here we can see that yes, this is a 2-to-1 risk to reward. And since we're replaying this, let's actually see what would have occurred if we actually take this trade when it tells us to. So of course we can see that price action continues here. And remember, we would have only entered right here. So this is where we would have entered. And we can see that price continues to move up. And of course you can see right now, price is literally about to take profit. So, of course, the reason I actually wanted to do this one with a few hours delay is because I know that oftentimes on these videos, individuals will say that all of these models essentially have data. So you're basically just testing on something that it already knows, even though that's not the case. If you actually ask some of these models what their most recent data collection point is, they'll actually tell you it's not anytime recent. We can literally see right here that the O4 mini model has a knowledge cutoff date of May 31st, 2024. That means that the model was trained up until that date, and any date after that, all that data is basically out of distribution data. But if it actually succeeds on, it'll actually do pretty well. So of course, this is something that is, kind of surprising to me because it did actually manage to get a really solid entry here. And provided that this trade is about to, hit take profit, it's actually a really exciting sign that, these models can potentially do some technical analysis. Now, it wasn't just a completely game-changing thing. I actually want to show you guys why this did fail in some areas, but these areas don't really matter that much. So after it did this, I do know that the model does have tools to be able to draw different charts, and I essentially asked it to be able to draw that on the actual model. You can see right here that it says the annotated trade levels, and it actually didn't draw the right chart. So I actually asked it to use my chart and put the support and resistance, but we can see here that although it managed to draw on the chart directly, it didn't actually draw the correct levels directly either. This is something that the model still struggle with. I'm not entirely sure why. I did try a variety of different prompting techniques, and I did try the other model O3, but it just isn't able to accurately draw onto the charts just yet. For example, in O3, what it did do is it did actually manage to draw some swing highs and swing lows. For example, with O3, if you actually do want the model to draw a swing high or a swing low, it can actually do that rather correctly. If we just open this image in a new tab, we can actually see that it actually does get the most recent swing high and the recent swing low. Now, I've got to be honest with you guys, it did take around 4 minutes to draw this, so it isn't time effective at all, but we can see that it does / is able to zoom in on the swing low and is able to zoom in on the swing high, which might be a useful feature for some traders. But one of the issues here is that you can see that it actually thinks for around 4 minutes, which is a bit long considering the fact that the average human can just draw a line here and a line here literally within seconds. Now, it's been a couple of hours and it's absolutely crazy the kind of trade ChatGPT made here. We can literally see that it managed to get the 2-to-1 risk to reward ratio so perfect. I mean, it doesn't really get better than that in trading. So, I mean, I guess you could say that, this is one time, it's pretty lucky, but, what I'm going to do now is I am actually going to test more pieces of data and then we'll be able to see. Now, of course, this is 1 hour on an altcoin, but I do say that suspiciously getting this close to the area where it actually is probably the best area to take profit is pretty crazy. So let's actually start back testing this a little bit more because of course a live trade was pretty amazing, but let's see if it can actively test a bit more. So if we want to do that, we just want to use the replay bar right here. We know exactly what happens after this. Price actually moves down. And as a trader, this, is a clear area for me to personally get in at this level. I probably would be shorting here, but let's actually see if ChatGPT just using vision is able to accurately do technical analysis and put a decent stop loss and take profit. So once again, I'm going to take my screenshot right here. I'm actually going to grab this prompt once again, and then let's see, okay, let's actually see if it can actually give me a trade that would have worked. Because, the great thing about TradingView is that we can really easily backtest these ideas. And I will say that, one example isn't great, but you do need to be able to test this out quite a bit of times to be able to see just how good it is. So it tells us that the swing high is at 325, Mike's bar the tool wick, which is kind of accurate. 325 here is actually, I guess you could say the swing high, there's kind of support there. And then it actually gives us the support low, which is at 298. I think that is currently correct. It is kind of correct, yeah. So I do want to see it actually saying a bear flag, but it does say that there's a hint of a double bottom around 298. I mean, I think this one is pretty obvious for me, but maybe not for ChatGPT. So what it actually does talk about as well is it actually does talk about the volume profile. So I will actually need to include that in my screenshot. So I'm actually going to do this one more time just so that I actually have the volume screenshot in. But I think it actually got it right. It says for now, I'd actually stay out and wait for one of these two clean signals. It either says we want a bullish breakout above 320 on higher than average volume, or a bearish retest that holds that could be for a short, okay? That is absolutely crazy, guys. So this is actually pretty correct. So what it actually says here, okay, like the long entry. So I'm actually going to do both of these. So the long entry on breakout, okay, is essentially above 325 on volume. But we do know that it was a short because, of course, it does get rejected. So it says if price rallies into 325 and fails, put your stop loss at 330 and put your take profit at 305. So let's actually get the short icon out here. Let's get this short position going. And it says put our take profit at 305. So this is ChatGPT's actual trade setup right here. But what I will do is I will actually give it the screenshot again just to see if it makes any changes, because I realized that the volume profile here, it actually might be affecting it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this in one more time. So this is a more comprehensive screenshot, and let me actually just put this in and let's actually see. So I'm actually going to put this one on 1 times because I actually don't want this one to be too fast, but this is actually how ChatGPT would trade this. We can see the bars actually just didn't even get into that area. So with that one, what we did see is that ChatGPT was waiting for convincing bullish moves above this level, and it didn't even get there. So even with this kind of trade, you actually wouldn't have lost money here, which is actually a decent sign that ChatGPT was waiting for confirmation. And this is probably where I would draw my support as well, because if we actually draw the horizontal right here, we can see that price does actually need to break this key level before we need to get up. It does look kind of like a double bottom, but ideally you would need to break the neckline and you would need to break this line in order for a decent confirmation to be out. So even with that trade, you wouldn't have actually lost money there. And we can see that, you know, price here, it actually does move, you know, all the way down anyway. So ChatGPT still trading at a decent level. So what I will do here is I will try one more example. So right here, I think this is a pretty easy example of a symmetrical wedge that is quite likely to break up here. So once again, I'm actually going to add this area. After this, we know that, you know, the chart really has a huge spike. So this is basically a symmetrical wedge, which is pretty easy to spot. Of course, if we draw our lines right here, you know, here and here. But honestly, trying to gauge the direction in which it's going to go is actually pretty difficult, which is why we're asking ChatGPT. So what I will do is I will once again take the screenshot and we're going to ask it about this setup now. So now it seems to be thinking. Let's see what it does. And so here we have our trade decision after thinking for 34 seconds. It gives us our key levels, which is, you know, 324 in terms of the swing low, which is actually rather correct. I would say it's probably a little bit higher than that. I mean, these levels don't really matter. What we really want to look at is, of course, the opportunity. But once again, it successfully identifies the ascending triangle consolidation. It says after the sharp drop to 324, price rallied strongly up to $3.90 and then stalled. And in the last dozen candles, we see higher lows into flat highs, the beginning of an ascending triangle consolidation. Volume, notice it peaked on the big drop and then tailed off as price dropped sideways. This is textbook for a triangle, declining volume ahead of a potential breakout. I'm not sure why it also gives us this moving average stuff, considering there's no moving average on the chart. I think it's actually my mistake by including this into the prompt where I say, if visible, analyze simple indicators. And since the models are trained to think a lot, they can actually start to, you know, put things that aren't there, basically hallucinate. So the trade decision it actually uses is basically stay out for now, which is, you know, ideally a good trade decision. You don't need to trade every single opportunity, but it does give us some options. So it does say, I'd wait for one of these two clear setups rather than chase. So it says, our entry would be a 1 hour close above $3.90 on rising volume. Then our stop loss at $3.85 and our take profit at $4.15. So let's actually plug in these values. So this trade is actually interesting. It actually gives us a very, very large risk to reward ratio with a very tight stop loss. But let's actually see what happens. If we click play, I'm actually going to see what happens here. It's actually moving pretty slowly, so I can actually speed this up a little bit. And then, okay, that's actually pretty interesting because you guys can see right here that like the trade is simply waiting. And we can see that literally as price comes up, here, we can literally see that, you know, you would have entered here. And remember, this is the hourly chart. So, of course, if you're actually looking for your entry, you would have essentially waited here. And what's crazy about this is that, like, you still wouldn't have gotten liquidated because when we actually look at the raw values here, we can see that ChatGPT manages to luckily just before it actually gets to the take profit here, it actually manages to just immediately get that and have a 5-to-1 risk to reward ratio, which is actually pretty good. Now remember guys, that was just trade one. It actually gave me a second trade. Take a look at this second trade it gave me. It said entry, if price drops back to $3.75, put your stop loss at $3.70 and put your take profit at $3.90. So let's actually input those values right now. The take profit at $3.90, the stop loss at $3.70, and our entry at $3.75, giving us once again a very interesting trade between 378. So if we actually draw this down even further, it'd probably be a little bit more accurate. So between 378 to 375, that's the area for going long. And it says only go long here if price goes there and holds. And what's crazy about this, guys, is that price actually does hold here. If we actually go on to down to, you know, a smaller time frame, which is of course what you do when you're marking your entry as a trader, look at what happens, guys. So we actually wait for price to go down here. And I'm actually going to, you know, input this at 3 times. We're actually going to see that price comes down. And of course, let's see, wait for price to hold. This is, of course, where we'd probably get in here. And of course, let's see, we've already set our trade. And boom, guys, that is another trade that ChatGPT just took successfully, guys. So once again, we've seen that the power of AI is absolutely insane. And I'm not going to lie, it's absolutely incredible that it gave us 2 winning trades in this simple example, especially when it actually told us to stay out for now because it's pretty crazy. So I think you have to understand just how good this is because it didn't do this with any macroeconomic data at all. It's literally just looking at a specific chart. And that would be so much harder when you have all of these crazy things going on. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely going to be testing this in an agentic framework to actually backtest this in real trades with real money. And I'm actually going to be doing that in my community. I'm going to be posting all the results there and absolutely everything for everyone to enjoy. So if you enjoy that kind of content, don't forget to check out the community. I'm going to be providing all the prompts and all the resources that I use. And I'll see you guys in the next video.